Thanks, Dr. Jha is also there, my colleague and HOD of medicine. And thanks, Endocrine Society of India, for connecting all us together. I think today I'm the opening batsman, and let us see how it goes. So, pregnancy and Graves' disease or thyrotoxicosis, I'm going to talk, and let's see how it goes. So hyperthyroidism, or to be precise, is a Graves' disease during pregnancy. And we are aware that there are two cases. One is real Graves, and other is pregnancy-related hyperthyroidism. The first lady is 30 years old lady, 10 weeks pregnancy. She came with weakness, palpitation, disturbed sleep, tremors, and increased sweating for the past 2 weeks. She has discomfort because she gets generalized weakness in routine activity. She complained of mild swelling in her neck, and there's no significant past medical or social or family history. The lady is afebrile, weight is 65, BMI is 23.8, pulse rate is 105 resting, blood pressure is 130/80, respiratory rate is okay, thyroid is diffuse enlarged, and it is a firm non-tender goiter she has, and on cardiac examination she has a tachycardia, there's no gallop, abdomen and other systemic examinations were normal. The question is what to do for this. We'll be coming to that. We have another lady who is 22 years old. She has 12 weeks gestation. She presented with mild elevated blood pressure, abnormal TSS. She has palpitation, and she was not gaining weight in spite of having good appetite. The usual story. The pulse rate is 100 per minute. Blood pressure is 140/70. She has a fine tremors in her hands, and thyroid was just palpable. Eyes are normal. She has no proptosis or any eye signs suggestive of Graves. Lab shows the routine investigation were normal. T3, T4 were mildly elevated. TSH was suppressed less than 0.01. And so we diagnosed her to have thyrotoxicosis with early pregnancy, query pregnancy related hyperthyroidism. So that was two cases we have. So let us we go to the topic proper. And we are aware that normally it is the hypothalamus which produces TRH, a thyrotropin releasing hormone, which works on pituitary, produces TSH, and TSH works on follicular cells or TSH receptors in our thyroid, which produces T3, T4, and we have the feedback T3, T4, they suppress TRH and TSH. But in pregnancy, the placenta produces estrogen, which works on liver, which produces more of a thyroid binding globulin. So we have the total T4 goes down, goes up, and so also the free hormones are more. And there are deiodinases type 2 and type 3 from the placenta, which produce T3 to T4 to T3 and T4 to reverse T3 also. We have the, and we also have from placenta the HCG initial trimester. HCG, the homology is almost same as that of TSH. So the thyroid cannot recognize if TSH is quite, HCG is quite high, it starts producing more T3, T4. So have total T3, T4, they go up. So also the free T4 by mildly, and they have the negative pigment. So early pregnancy, one can have the suppressed TSS and mildly elevated free T4 and total T3, T4 are more. So what happens? This is what you see the TBG is more, total T4 is more, SCG is more, and the same way almost mirror image is that of SCG. The TSS comes down early pregnancy, first trimester. So this is what happens. Free T4 is mildly elevated. We know that pregnancy has effect on thyroid physiology because of rise in TBG, rise in plasma volume. So we have total T3, T4 production more, and the pool goes up, and there is a T3 expression in placenta and uterus. And in first trimester, I told you, there's the increase in HCG, which leads to increase in free T4 as well as a reduction in TSH. There's an increased renal clearance of iodide, so iodine requirements, they go up. And because of the oxygen consumption in the fetal-placenta unit and gravity uterus and in mother, the BMR goes up, and sometimes the cardiac output also increases. So this is what happens. So ultimately, initially I have suppressed TSH, elevated T3, T4, and mild elevated free T4 normally, and it is because of the TBG. So what is important now? Graves' disease or hyperthyroidism in pregnancy. 2 out of 1,000 or 0.2% of the people, they have overt hyperthyroidism during pregnancy. 1.7% of the pregnancy have either mildly hyperthyroid or they have subclinical hyperthyroidism. So only 1 in 1,000 will have Graves or clear-cut hyperthyroidism, but 1.7 or around 2% may have subclinical hyperthyroidism. The etiology is usual. The Graves' disease counts almost 85 to 90% cases of hyperthyroidism. There is a toxic adenoma, toxic multinodal goiter, sometimes thyroiditis. You see, rarely TSH-dependent adenoma, sometimes factitious hyperthyroidism, and iodide-induced hyperthyroidism. These are the rare cases. And pregnancy-related or SCG-associated thyrotoxicosis, you see BMS's gravidarum, high density for mole, and SCG-mediated hyperthyroidism also the causes, especially during the early pregnancy. One has to take care of all these things. What are the recommendations? The recommendation of the American Thyroid Association 2017, they have shown there is if you find suppressed TSH in first trimester, take a medical history, do the proper physical examination, measure maternal free as well as total T4, and measurement of TSH receptor antibodies, stimulating antibodies. Maternal total T3 may also prove to be helpful in determining thyroid etiology of thyrotoxicosis. These are the strong recommendations and moderate quality evidence. So you have depressed TSH, measure total T4, T3, and go for, if needed, for TSH receptor antibodies. Graves' disease is the most common cause of hyperthyroidism, almost counting 85 to 90% of the cases, and it is because of the thyroid stimulating antibodies. Sometimes it becomes difficult to diagnose because the pregnancy-related symptoms can also overlap by presence of goiter. The anti-TSH receptor antibodies, stimulating antibodies, and high levels of T3, T4, they certainly tell us that we are dealing with real hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease. Pathogenesis-wise, it is an autoimmune problem, and we know we have TSH stimulating receptor stimulating antibodies and TSH receptor blocking antibodies, and there's a balance between them. When the stimulating antibodies we have more, we call it a Graves' disease. When thyroid blocking antibodies could be more, one develops hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and anti-TPO are just a sign to suggest that you are dealing with autoimmune thyroid disease. There is a problem in helper T cells. Now we are talking helper T cells, B cells in this COVID era. So what has happened? The helper T cells, they give up and they produce more of thyroid stimulating antibodies. These antibodies, they work on thyroid receptors on the follicular cells and stimulate the cellular growth as well as the function. So have more of a goiter as well as the hyperthyroidism. So this is what happens in Graves' disease, and it is an autoimmune problem. So this is, you have hyperthyroidism, you have diffuse goiter, you have ophthalmopathy, and pretibial myxemia in some of the cases in Graves' disease. So Graves' disease has goiter, ophthalmopathy, and pretibial myxemia along with hyperthyroidism. Sometimes patients are mildly elevated also. So there are clinical features to suggest whether you are dealing with a Graves' disease in a pregnant lady. We should take their history. They take prior history of autoimmune problems or family history of thyroid problems, and this may lead us or may tell us. And typical symptoms, they usually include the weight loss or failure to gain the weight during pregnancy, palpitation, proximal muscle weakness, emotional lability, ophthalmopathy, and pretibial myxemia. The patient has goiter. They may have accentuated symptoms that of pregnancy, that is like diaphoresis, heat intolerance, and fatigability. Some of the patient may have that pruritus or itching in the body also. And physical examination will have the tachycardia, widened pulse pressure, and the eye signs could be there, and the goiter will be there, and some of them they have the brittling nail on onycholysis. And during first trimester of pregnancy, because of the elevated SCG, the symptoms of Graves may get aggravated. They become better once the immunity goes down during second and third trimester. As soon as the lady delivers in postpartum phase, there's a sudden rise in TSH receptor antibody, and they may have aggravation of Graves' disease. So during second and third trimester, it comes down, but it comes back, reverse back in after the delivery. And there are complications of hyperthyroidism in pregnancy, in maternal, like congestive heart failure, thyroid storm, preeclampsia, spontaneous abortions, stillbirths, and preterm deliveries. Fetus may have neonatal deaths, and they may have low birth weight, and fetal neonatal hyperthyroidism has been seen and we have intrauterine growth retardation, and sometimes congenital malformations, maybe per se, or maybe because of the medications. And laboratory-wise, we have suppressed T3, TSH, and elevated T3, T4, and there is a ratio of T3, T4 is usually more than 20, and that suggests that you are dealing with Graves or toxic multinuclear goiter. And lab-wise, we can measure TSH receptor antibodies, and they help in diagnosis in difficult or confusing cases because sensitivity is 98%. And certainly they may also show the newer onset of Graves' disease in postpartum phase. Anti-TP antibody, anti-thyroglobulin antibody, they are mildly elevated in Graves, but they are more in Hashimoto. They don't really help. The helpful is the TSH receptor antibody or stimulating antibody. Management wise, if you see, several studies have shown that complications, both obstetric and medical, are more if the patient control of hyperthyroidism is not proper. And the duration of euthyroid stay during pregnancy deals with the obstetric complications. So patient is euthyroid, they go smoothly. If they are not controlled, there could be problems like pregnancy loss, pregnancy-induced hypertension, prematurity, low birth weight, intrauterine growth retardation, stillbirth, thyroid storm, even the maternal congestive cardiac failure can be seen during pregnancy because of the cardiac output goes up. Management wise, we have three important medications as we have methimase or carbimazole, methimazole, and PTO, propyl thyroxine. They are the mainstay of the treatment. Initial dose of it depends on the severity of symptoms and how high the T3, T4 are. Methimazole is 5 to 30 milligrams a day. Carbimazole is 10 to 40 milligrams, and propyl thyroxine dose is 10 to 100 to 600 milligrams a day in divided doses, or even you can give carbimazole and methimazole once a day also. We should try to give the lowest possible dose of PT or methimazole and keep the T3, T4 at upper limit of the normal or upper 1/3 of the normal. The normal range for pregnancy for T4 and T3 are almost 1.5 times the non-pregnant state. We should keep monitoring the T3, T4 every 2 to 4 weeks and adjust the dose and keep it at minimal. TSH may not be that helpful. Later it could be helpful measurement. There are teratogenic effects of antithyroid drugs. Methimazole in 1972, people have published the first case of aplasia cutis. The skin is not there in neonate. There are syndrome of methimazole or carbimazole embryopathy, and there are like colonal or esophageal atresia, various types of abdominal defects like umbilical, eye, urinary, and ventricular septal defect of VSD. Both methimazole and PTU in early pregnancy may lead to the birth defect in 2 to 3% of the exposed children. The risk of relapse and hyperthyroidism, we want to stop because of pregnancy, but withdrawal could be a problem, especially in a woman who was treated in a short period of time, less than 6 months. Those who have suppressed TSH, they may reverse back. Those who need higher doses of methimazole or carbimazole, more than 10 milligrams a day, and those who have active orbitopathy, big goiter, and high level of these receptor antibodies, TSH. These are the people where you cannot really withdraw. You may have to continue medications in these patients. And there are several studies which have suggested that congenital anomalies could be aplasia cutis, colonal atresia, I told you, amphiloceal, esophageal atresia, BSD, or even dysmorphic feces could be there. Nipple abnormality could be seen in these patients. There are study which was done in Danish national study, and which has suggested that previously we used to think that propyl thyroxine is better, but they have shown that 2 to 3% of the people, children exposed to PTU during pregnancy, they had some kind of birth defect, but these birth defects are milder than we get with the methimazole and carbimazole. So what is the conclusion of this study was that PTU and methima and carbimazole used in early pregnancy were associated with increased prevalence of birth defects, more with carbima and methimazole as compared to PTU, especially in first trimester. Use of these antithyroid drugs in early pregnancy should be limited, and use them at proper doses. And you may shift from PTU to methimazole, carbimazole after the first trimester is there, and you can shift the patient from methima or to PTU once the patient wants to become pregnant. Even before pregnancy starts, one can start the PTU in those patients. European Thyroid Association, as well as American College of Obs and Gynecologists 2015 and 2018, they have suggested you shift from PTU to methimazole once the first trimester has gone at around 16 weeks on second trimester. So PTU can go up and you put them on methimazole and carbimazole. And very important to monitor the fetus, because measurement of these TSI, that is thyroid stimulating antibodies, at 26 to 20 weeks assess the fetal or neonatal hyperthyroidism. These antibodies are maybe present in the lady who has become euthyroid after thyroidectomy or nuclear ablation, and they may not appear thyrotoxic, but the fetus may have problems. So one should perform the fetal ultrasound at 26 to 28 weeks, especially in the people who are having uncontrolled hyperthyroidism during second trimester, and those who have very elevated, more than 3 times the upper limit of normal of thyroid receptor antibodies. We should monitor the heart rate fetal, the growth, the amniotic fluid volume, and presence of fetal goiter. These are the strong recommendations, have moderate quality evidence. And we should consult experienced gynecologists like Dr. Nilesh Dalal, and we should go for maternal fetal medicine specialists are recommended. And chordocentesis, it has been rarely used and performed in appropriate settings. It may detect in the woman who's on anti-thyroid drugs, whether fetus is hyperthyroid or hypothyroid. These are the weak recommendations, and we don't have much quality of them. Those who have adenoma or thyroid adenoma, and we put them on anti-thyroid drugs, one should measure or monitor the fetus for hypothyroidism. Fetal hypothyroidism is common in them, so we try to give them the lowest possible dose. And the patients who have very high concentration of these TSS receptor antibodies, we should monitor the fetus, as I told you, for hyperthyroidism, even if mother is euthyroid post-thyroidectomy. These are the recommendations. Post-thyroidectomy, the mother will not have, but she will have those antibodies which may go and work in the fetus and make the fetus hyperthyroidism. So these are the stronger recommendations and high quality evidence. So lady, if you have Graves' disease, had thyroidectomy or radioactive iodine ablation, one should monitor fetus carefully and treat them if needed. And these are the management. The lady who wants to become pregnant, I'm also almost coming to my end of my talk, who's becoming active disease from the previously, you should try to treat them with anti-thyroid drugs, and you can measure the TSS receptor antibodies. The fetus should be monitored. If they have fetal tachycardia, give the appropriate doses to the mother. It may settle the fetal tachycardia, and we keep reassessing them every 4 to 6 weeks. Those who are newly diagnosed Graves' disease or those who have relapsed during pregnancy, we treat them anti-thyroid drugs. And there is a gestation, as I told you, the lady who has undergone thyroid ablation, either by surgery or radioactive iodine, you should measure antibodies during pregnancy and watch the fetus for the hyperthyroidism, fetal hyperthyroidism. If fetal hyperthyroidism is detected, tachycardia is there, and there's a goiter, you treat the lady with PTU, and at the fetus becomes euthyroid, and at the same time the lady will become hypothyroid, we give them thyroxine on the top of it. So this is a complicated, but we can do it, and we keep reassessing anti-thyroid or TSS receptor antibodies at the beginning of pregnancy to know whether this lady is going to have trouble or problem in second or third trimester or after delivery. We have some indication for thyroidectomy. Anti-thyroid drugs we give in a newly diagnosed case, and those who are already previous history is there. People go for subtotal thyroidectomy, especially in second trimester, if they have severe reaction to anti-thyroid drugs. They need persistently high doses of anti-thyroid drugs because they may create problems for the fetus or neonate if they have compressive symptoms of goiter, and if they don't tolerate, and if they don't have, problems are there as far as the goiter is concerned, and they are not compliant, then we should. Radioactive iodine is out of question because it is contraindicated, gets concentrated in fetal thyroid, it can create problem. Subclinical hyperthyroidism with normal T3, T4 and suppressed TSH, one should not treat them because you are not sure about the advantage, but we can create problems for the fetus. A word about the neonatal thyrotoxicosis. 1% of the neonates may have neonatal hyperthyroidism, which should be measured during the intrauterine life, and we can just do it more if the patient, the mother has high levels of TSS receptor antibodies, and the fetus has goiter and fetal tachycardia is there, and they have advanced bone age, poor growth, craniosynostosis, and cardiac failure and hydrops are there. One look for the neonatal hyperthyroidism. Thyroid storm is emergency. 10% of the female with hyperthyroidism may go in cardiac failure, may have seizures, nausea, vomiting, and arrhythmias. Inciting events are usually infection, surgery, or labor or delivery. One should, even T3, T4 levels are not available to treat them aggressively and make them, otherwise it can create problems even the life. The last two things are hyperemesis gravidarum and gestation hypertrophic disease. Because of the HCG versus TSH, they have elevated T3, T4 and suppressed TSH, but there is no history of thyroid disease. They don't have any goiter, they don't have any eye signs, and it is a self-limiting disease, doesn't need much treatment. If they symptomatically want to treat, if they have hyperemesis, give them IV fluids and other. Sometimes we give them beta blockers and they can be considered. And trophoblastic, I think this is a removal of hydatidiform mole is the only thing, because they have very, very high SCG, more than 10,000 or 100,000, and raised T3, T3, T4 and suppressed TSH. So surgical removal is the only option for them. And postpartum thyroiditis, sometimes it may present as transient hyperthyroidism and transient hypothyroidism, but we should keep measuring them, and if needed, we treat them just with beta blockers and observe. I think this is what we have covered so far, that we've seen the hyperthyroidism, the Graves' disease, the gestation-related hyperthyroidism, and the postpartum thyroiditis. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Professor Jai and Professor Nilesh Dalal. Thank you.